Number 10. The murder of Savannah Gold. A man in Florida was recently sentenced for the murder of his co-worker. It happened in 2017, with Lee Rodart Jr. killing Savannah Gold. The two had worked together at the Bonefish Grill in Mandarin. According to the prosecutors, the pair were in an on-again, off-again relationship for quite some time, while Savannah was working as the manager. Surveillance footage shows Savannah arriving to work at 5:30 at night, but never entering the restaurant. She instead goes into Lee's car, and that was the last time she was seen alive. Lee was seen on the footage taking something out of Savannah's car, then getting back into his own and driving away. At this point, the surveillance footage hadn't actually been checked. Nobody knew what was going on, and to make matters even more confusing, Savannah's family began getting text messages from her phone. But the text messages were weird, filled with spelling errors and strange wording. Her family immediately knew something was wrong. In the message, she claimed that she quit her job and ran away with her boyfriend. Despite all the strangeness, Lee still wasn't arrested. Savannah's family went looking for her, handed out flyers all over town. It took 3 days before the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office caught up with Lee, and he grudgingly admitted to the murder. He killed her and then dumped her body in a lake. Thankfully, he had been sentenced to 40 years in prison. Number 9. Going postal. By far, the most famous case of a coworker gone wrong goes back to 1991, when a former postal worker coined the phrase, going postal. It was Joseph Harris who walked into the post office in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and shot 2 of his former coworkers to death in a horrifying fit of rage. But believe it or not, these weren't the first killings. The night before, Joseph Harris had murdered his former supervisor by cutting him up with a samurai sword. He then shot her fiancée. Joseph Harris had had a difficult life up to that point. He was literally born in prison and suffered a lifetime of mental problems. In April of 1990, he was fired from his job at the post office. But, unbeknownst to the people left at the post office, he harbored a grudge against his ex-employer. Joseph began stockpiling weapons, including firearms, grenades, and swords. Roughly 2 years after he was fired, he learned that he had lost $10,000 by investing with a shady broker. Naturally, Harris dressed up in a ninja costume, broke in Edwards' house, assaulted Edwards' wife and both his daughters, then shot Edwards to death after making him watch. Harris was never caught for this crime because Edwards had caused a lot of people to lose money. There were actually too many suspects. It wasn't until he shot up the post office that they brought him in for this other crime as well. Harris was supposed to get the death penalty, but he ended up dropping dead of natural causes in 1996. Number 8. Not working hard enough. If telling someone they are working too slow is bad, telling an employee they're not working hard enough must be too. In Pennsylvania, the police had arrested a 51-year-old man for stabbing his coworker. This isn't actually that unusual in the United States, but the details of this case make it one of the most bizarre. The stabber is Anthony Towles, currently charged with 2 felony counts of aggravated assault and 1 count of terroristic threats. According to the police officials, the incident happened outside of a Five Guys burger restaurant in the city of Altoona. Both Anthony and his victim were working at the restaurant, but they had gotten into an argument. The victim, who happened to be the manager, accused Anthony of not working hard enough. He said Anthony was slacking off and that he needed to get his stuff together if he wanted to keep his job. Well, the argument got so heated that the pair took it into the parking lot. Then, Anthony informed his manager that he was going to kill him. He then took out a pen from one of his socks. And no, we have no idea why he was keeping a pen in his sock, and stabbed his manager in the face with it. Anthony told police that he was only trying to hit him in the shoulder with the pen, but either way, it ended up penetrating his head, just behind his ear and a few inches from his carotid artery. The manager survived. Anthony has obviously been fired, and he's currently been kept at the Blair County Prison while he awaits sentencing. Number 7. Spoilers at Domino's Pizza. In Texas, a man was beaten up at work because of the Avengers. It happened just after the hit movie Avengers Endgame came out. A guy went into work at Domino's Pizza, started talking to his coworkers about the ending of the film, and Justin Gregory's surface snapped. Gregory hadn't seen the movie yet and had made a point he didn't want any spoilers. Then lo and behold, his coworker went and ruined the movie for him. 11 franchises, 21 movies, and 11 years of Marvel films all accumulated in a 3-hour-long epic, and it was just simply ruined. Understandably, Greg lost his marbles. He attacked his coworker like he was trying to take on Thanos, beating the poor guy so badly that his other coworkers called the cops. But believe it or not, the cops actually sympathized with Gregory. Rather than charging him with assault, they left him off with a citation. Clearly, the officers understood just how important the movie was. The moral of the story here is, well, don't spoil things for Gregory. Do you think Gregory was justified in this assault? And for that matter, what would you do if one of your coworkers spoiled something you had been waiting 11 years for? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Working Rampage. In Davenport, a disagreement on the job resulted in a triple murder. Sheriff Grady Judd had identified the 3 contractors who were killed in Polk County by their out-of-control coworker as Kevin Lanusay, Delwan Donnell, and Gregory Dolezal. The murderer is Sean Runyon, who had been working with the victims on an electrical contract for the company Publix. All 4 of them worked for J&B Electric, based in Pennsylvania. They were staying together in a rental home, but obviously they weren't very good roommates. The rampage started when Sean's supervisor, Kevin Lanusay, told him that he needed to work faster. Anyone who's ever been accused of working too slowly knows just how well this lovely compliment can improve their speed. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Sean was actually so angry that he punched Kevin in the face and walked off the job. But it didn't end there. Sean returned to their shared housing the next morning, just before 10 a.m., and murdered all 3 of his coworkers while they slept by beating them to death with a baseball bat. That's about as brutal as it gets, to be quite honest. Just try to imagine being woken up in the morning by an angry coworker bludgeoning your brains out of your head with a bat. Gregory Dolezal managed to escape the beating and run through the house, but Sean caught up to him and finished off the job with a knife. Naturally, Sean fled the scene and tried to escape, but he was eventually tracked down by the police and arrested. He's now being held without bond and will probably be sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. Number 5. The stabbing of CAROLYN BYINGTON. A married man has been charged with murdering his female coworker after following her home during her lunch break. This guy was an accountant in New Jersey whose wife had actually given birth to their first child just before the murder took place. The body of CAROLYN BYINGTON, just 26 years old, was discovered in her apartment after she failed to return to work after her lunch break. The police found her with multiple stab wounds, as well as an obvious sign of blunt force trauma. But just like the story we talked about, it took the police way too long to identify Kenneth Saul as her murderer. They investigated for weeks before they finally caught up to the guy. The pair had worked at a place called Engine, a marketing firm based in New Jersey. According to CAROLYN's neighbors, they had heard screams and the sound of furniture being moved about just before the police performed the wellness check that ultimately resulted in the discovery of her lifeless body. In the days following, Kenneth was noted as acting strangely. He continuously asked his coworkers suspicious questions about CAROLYN's death, such as whether someone could have been convicted for that type of murder based on circumstantial evidence. Ultimately, the police learned that Kenneth had actually been waiting for CAROLYN to arrive at her home from her lunch break. He had planned the whole thing out. When they arrested him, they even found what they believed to be the murder weapon. However, Kenneth never gave a motive for the crime. Maybe he was jealous of her youth and good looks. Maybe she had ignored him one too many times in the office. We just don't know. Number 4. Off with his head. In Oklahoma, an employee at a food processing plant was fired. This kind of thing happens every day, but this guy took it personally. Immediately after he was let go, he drove to a different part of the processing plant, walked into the office where his boss was sitting, and chopped the guy's head off. Oh yes, he beheaded his boss. That's definitely one way to make a point. Then, presumably caught up in his bloodlust, he walked out with the same knife that he had just used to cut the man's head off and stabbed the secretary several times. Luckily, the secretary made it to the hospital in time and was able to survive, but the headless man, well, he was dead. According to Moore Police Sergeant Jeremy Lewis, the killer was then shot down by the president and chief operating officer of the company. Mark was also a reserve deputy with the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department. He was able to keep his cool, interpret the situation, and wound the killer as he tried to continue his rampage. The police have identified the murderous ex-employee as Alton Nolan, 30 years old. He was taken to the hospital in stable condition and should make a full recovery, enabling him to spend the rest of his life in jail. As for why he was fired in the first place, he had recently converted to Islam and was trying to convert his coworkers. His coworkers eventually complained enough that Alton was let go, at which point he went full psycho. Imagine being that secretary who saw her boss get his head chopped off and was stabbed just sitting in her office. Number 3. Ran over twice. A drunken argument between a pair of construction workers escalated into an attempted murder in Milwaukee. According to Racine County prosecutors, 29-year-old Ivan Verbinski got so fed up with his annoying coworker that he got in his truck, ran the guy over, then backed up and ran over him again. He has since been caught by the police, and it wasn't exactly the sneakiest crime. He was then charged with first-degree reckless endangering, as well as a hit-and-run. If found guilty on all charges, he could end up spending 18 years in prison. By the time officers showed up at the scene, paramedics were already treating the victim. He informed the officers that Ivan had run him over without cause. But according to eyewitnesses, the victim had actually picked up a cinder block and tried to throw it through the window of Ivan's truck. Interpreting that as an attempt on his life, Ivan then hit the gas, swerved directly at the victim, and ran him down. But before he left, he backed up and drove over the victim's already crippled body. The victim suffered severe bruising and lacerations, though he miraculously didn't have a single broken bone. Number 2. A killing break. In Hiroshima, Japan, a young worker at the Mazda Motor Corporation was arrested after killing one of his coworkers inside a company dormitory, then stealing all his cash. His name is Suguru Kamikawa, and he's currently being charged with beating 19-year-old Koyehei Sugano to death with a fire extinguisher. According to the police, he killed the young man after learning that he had withdrawn nearly $12,000 from an ATM earlier in the day. Knowing that Koyehei had all that cash on him was simply too tempting. And then Suguru cornered him in a stairwell of their dormitory and whacked him on the head with the fire extinguisher until he stopped breathing. It's not clear exactly how he had anticipated getting away with this crime. He didn't exactly have anywhere to run, and he wasn't going to get far with such a small amount of money. Plus, he actually returned to work after committing the murder. It didn't take long for the police to put together the pieces. When they questioned Suguru, he broke down and admitted what he did. But he said it wasn't just to rob the boy. It was because they had gotten into an argument, and, in a blind fit of rage, he picked up the fire extinguisher and did what he felt had to be done. And number 1, the blowhard. In Japan, a man has been arrested for blowing air up his friend's butt at work. He never meant to kill him, but the unusual prank resulted in the death of Akio Ishimaru anyway. The pair worked together at an industrial equipment manufacturing plant. The killer in this case is Yoshiyuki Yoshida, and according to him, the pair had been goofing around when he thought it would be funny to shove the nozzle of an air compressor up his coworker's butt. He then plunged the trigger and blasted air straight into his body, thinking it would just be a funny joke. Almost immediately, Mr. Ishimaru started to feel unwell. In fact, he felt terrible. Enough so that he left the job site and raced to the hospital. But unfortunately, there was just nothing the doctors could do to save him. The air had shot up his butt with such force that it damaged his lungs, and he died. And in case you were wondering, the air hose wasn't actually shoved in his butt. I'm talking about over the pants stuff here. But the air pressure was so intense that the air pushed through the clothing and entered the body anyway. It may have just been a prank, and both men had obviously just been messing around. But Yoshiyuki is still looking at jail time for the manslaughter. What's your biggest coworker nightmare? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and come back again for another awesome video. See you next time.